All right, I see a couple ones and twos. Perfect. My name is Sarah. I'm so glad you guys are all here. I started doing fresh milled flour about a year and a half ago. Not quite a year and a half ago, maybe a year and 3 months ago. Anyway, I started because my kids have an MTHFR gene mutation, and we will talk a little bit more about that later, but I needed something to replace bread and basically anything made with flour or grains because of this issue. Because folic acid is a neurotoxin for my kids. And so that was hard with 5 boys, right? So anyway, that's why I started, and I thought I could never do this. I work 2 jobs, and I'm busy mom, and I homeschool, and I'm in ministry, and I thought there's no way I have time for this. I have time for this. So um, we're going to share how we can make this easy, but I just wanted to introduce myself. So glad you guys are here. Again, just kind of be active in the chat if you have questions and we can pinpoint that. But if everybody can just stay muted, it makes it easier to hear. Otherwise, it's hard to understand what is going on. So, and I'm going to turn it over to Deborah. She's going to do some of the bread part for us tonight, and then we'll keep going.
All right, yes. Can you hear me good, Sarah? Does it sound okay? All
Yes.
right, good. All right. So hopefully you've had a chance to print out or you have a digital copy, whatever, of the documents we sent. So you should have the recipe we're going to follow. And then there is like a guide page, and we're going to be referring back and forth to that as we go along. So when I started fresh milled flour, I just did all the things not sourdough. Sourdough was not something I was going to get into. I thought, I don't have time. I don't have time for that. 5 kids, homeschooling. I was like, no way. I do not have time to add one more thing to it, thinking I had to be a slave to it. And I had to set my watch to, I got to be there to do all the stretching folds or all the different things. And it wasn't for me until I found a super simple method that works. And yeah, it's become very easy and I enjoy doing it. And with fresh milled flour too, I can start it the night before and then I'm baking my loaf midday the next day. So it's not a super long process because it does ferment a little bit faster. So, all right, hopefully you have starter already active if you're planning to make it alongside of us. If you don't, that's okay. You can just watch and then you can follow along. But I want to show you from the recipe how simple it is to just get active starter and what I do for this. So I keep my starter in the fridge all the time. And when I'm ready to make a loaf of bread, all I do is I take a small amount out, and that's what I'm going to make active for my loaf of bread. I'm not feeding the whole thing and keeping it all active and happy all the time. I've talked to people who have like jars of discard. I'm like, why? Just keep it in the fridge and make a small amount active when you need it. So when you look at the recipe that you have, that there's a step for the night before. And what we're going to do is we would take 2 tablespoons of the starter, mixing that with a quarter cup of water or 50 grams if you have a scale, and then 50 grams of flour or half a cup. So I'll just go ahead and do that here so you can see. I take my starter, and this I just took out of the fridge, and it is quite thick, but that will work. Scale on here. All right, so we're going to need I usually use between 20 and 30 grams, and doesn't have to be exact. And then you'll add in the flour, which I just milled, and then you'll add in a little bit of water. And this is exactly the way that you'll maintain your starter to feed it. So when you notice, like for me, and when my jar starts to get low, I'm like, oh, I need to feed it. And it's just kind of equal parts flour, water, and starter. You want it really thick if you're going to put it in the fridge for a while, because that just gives it more food. If you notice that you get like a black liquid on your sourdough starter, just pour it off and then go ahead and feed it again. It's just the alcohols that have fermented out of it. So it's not harmful. Just pour it off and feed it. So we're just going to stir this up and mix it all in. You should have a nice thick paste when you're done. Nice thick consistency. And then you're just going to set this aside. So you do this the night before and you're done. In the morning, you will have nice active starter. So hopefully, if you're planning to make a loaf of bread with us today, you have starter that you did this already. And I started this one this morning and it is nice and bubbly and happy, ready for my loaf of bread. So hopefully you have something similar, ready to go. So we've done that step. And now we can move on as if we were starting it the night before or the evening. So these time frames can be adjusted. Like you could start it in the morning if you want to make your bread in the evening like we are now. It just has to have enough time to get nice and active. So now we're on to the next morning. We've got active starter, it's ready to roll, and we are ready to make our loaf of bread. All right, taking your bowl, you're using a scale, which I do prefer to use the scale, just less dishes, things like that. But there are cup measurements on the recipe also if you prefer to do that. So we are going to put in 400 grams of water into our bowl. And this is just room temperature water. It does say on there filtered water. Yes, filtered water is best, but use whatever water you have. Yes, the city water might have some things in it and things like that might react differently, but you'll just get used to the water that you have and how it reacts. So put water in, and then you're going to add in your starter. And just kind of mix that up, and it should kind of lightly float. And I see the question of how much starter. Well, we're going to put in all that we did, which is about 120 to 130 grams if you're just working with active starter already. But when you're doing, like for me, I followed that recipe, doing 50 grams of flour and water into about 30 grams of starter. And I know I can just dump it all in. So if you've got your active starter ready to go, add in about 120 to 130 grams of that. And we're just mixing that up. And now we are going to add in the flour. And we are going to mill the flour fresh and then put it in. And if you aren't familiar with the different wheat berries and which ones work best for breads versus cookies, pastries, that kind of thing, I highly recommend using hard wheat for your breads. It just has a higher proteins. And the protein that's in wheat is when it gets wet, there are two specific proteins. When they get wet, they form like elastic structures that are going to help with the rise. So that's why your hard wheat, which has higher proteins, are going to be the ones you're going to want to use for breads. Now, the difference, you have hard white and you have hard red. This is more just a flavor preference between these two. White is a more mild flavor, whereas the red is just a hint of a nuttier flavor, I would say. So I like to use a combination of both in my sourdough, but in my sandwich bread, for example, I just use hard white. Again, it's completely a flavor preference. So we're going to go ahead and grind a little bit of the hard wheat for our bread. Now, I do have two different mills. If I can turn this so you can see. I have the Nutri-Milk Classic, this one, the Classic, and the Harvest. So it's just whatever, like this is the stone mill. So if you're looking for something that's with stones, grinding it, go with a Harvest. Nutri-Milk Classic, I like this one simply because I can put large volumes of flour through this. Actually, both can do large volumes, but this one, you just dump it all on the top and you can use it. It has the canister then that it catches it all. So this one was the first one I got, and it's a workhorse. I really like this one. I do like how pretty this one is sitting on my counter. I use it for small amounts when I'm just needing a little bit, but they both have their benefits for sure. So I'll go ahead and just mill a little bit in each so you can see each of them, and then we will mix up our bread. So when it says we need 4 cups of flour, that's really about 3 cups of wheat berries. So we're going to do, I'm going to do 2 white and then 1 red. So I'll go ahead and use the Classic first.
I'm gonna hop in here real quick and just say, if you are using store-bought flour, use the recipe that is on page 4 of the handout that I sent in the PDF, and I put it on this chat as well as in our messenger group that we've been using. If you're doing fresh milled flour, use the recipe on page 3 because they're a little bit different. We'll explain it a little bit more later. The header of page 4 is simple sourdough sandwich bread. Page 3 is the simple sourdough bread made with fresh milled flour. So if you're using store-bought, you're going to do simple sourdough sandwich bread. It's similar, you just have to add some extra ingredients.
So we have the 2 cups of the flour here from the classic. And yeah, it's nicely that's in the
It's a little hard to see with the
container.
lighting. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nice fine flour. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit in. And this is 500 grams you want. So I'm going to need a little bit more. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate the harvest milk. This one definitely took a little bit of adjustment to figure out how this one worked. But I think I've gotten it mastered. Yeah, it's a learning curve, but it is worth it. Some people just obviously love it. Oops, let's put the bowl in front of it. All right.
Can you back up? Yeah, there you go. I don't know if you guys can see, there is flour coming out the front. It's just really white on this on the with the camera to see all of it. It's like really, yeah.
Yeah, one thing with this one is I can't walk away from it. Whereas my classic, I can fill it up and mill it, and then I can just listen to the sounds. So that is one thing that with the harvest, you do have to be attentive, listening to it, and adjust when it's done. So I finished adding in some of the flour here. Oh, okay. And then we're just going to stir it up. And this should be a shaggy dough when you've got this mixed up. It's not going to be smooth and nice yet. It's just going to be a shaggy dough. Just want to get all the water incorporated into it. And then we are actually going to let this sit for about 45 minutes or so. And what that does, it's allowing the water to soften the bran and the germ. Because as the gluten structures begin to form, that bran and the germ, if they're really stiff, they will break those gluten structures. So we want to do what they call autolyse, and then you're going to have a nice, soft, fluffier bread when you allow it to soak in the bran and the germ. So yeah, you can see it's pretty shaggy. It's not a nice dough yet, but we're just going to set it aside, and then we'll come back to it in about 45 minutes. But also at this time, we're going to be preparing the salt mixture, and I like to mix the salt with a little bit of water and let that kind of begin to dissolve. Excuse me. All right, so in a bowl, I actually used the bowl that my sourdough starter was in, dishes, right? So 25 grams of salt is mixed into it. Let's put in the bowl, which is about 2 tablespoons. And then I add in about 10 grams of salt, which is just under 2 teaspoons. And now salt matters too. I'll explain in a few minutes about the flour and like, why are we going through all the trouble of milling it and things like that? But the same has been they've done to salt. So your iodized table salt is like stripped of all the minerals that God put in salt. It's all been stripped out. So I prefer to use Redmond's real salt. If you have like a pink Himalayan or a Celtic sea salt, something like that, you want a good quality ancient sea salt is what you want. So we're going to add in that 10 grams of salt.
Now, if you are using store-bought flour, you don't have to do the autolyse part where you're setting it aside to soak. The only reason you're doing that for fresh milled flour is because of the bran needing to soften, if that makes sense. So if you're doing the last page with the store-bought flour, that is not something you have to do.
Yeah, good point, Sarah. And with the store-bought flour also, you're going to add in I don't have the recipe in front of me, but adding in a little bit of honey and a little bit of olive oil, just because it doesn't have the natural oils that you find in the fresh milled flour. So, is there anyone using store-bought flour, or are we all using? Yes? Okay. All right.
I'm going to ask a question real quick. She asked, the starter isn't mixing in with the water. Does that usually take a long time?
For the first step, like when you're actually preparing your loaf?
Yeah, it's not gonna like totally dissolve.
No, it's not gonna be like a cloudy liquid. It's gonna have chunks in it and stuff. That's all gonna be mixed well. Once we add the salt in and really knead it, then it'll all get mixed in really well. And yep, doesn't have to be completely all together. It'll get mixed in. No. Yes. All right, so you're gonna cover those and set them aside. And while we wait, I love to explain kind of why go through the trouble? Why mill your own flour and get all your wheat berries? Why not just buy flour from the store? So to kind of explain this, we need to have a little history lesson. So think back to the late 1800s. They would have, throughout the 1800s, they would have grown their own wheat, taken it to the miller, and the miller would have ground that wheat, and they would take it home and bake with it. Everyone relied on those local millers to mill their grains for them. And it wasn't until then, late 1800s, when the steel rolling mills were invented, that white flour became the flour for everyone. They thought, this is fantastic. They no longer had to take all this wheat to the miller and do all that work, and everyone could have white flour. Because in order for it to be shelf stable and to be transported all over, they had to sift out the bran and the germ. So they sifted that out, shelf stable, everyone can have nice and fluffy pancakes and cookies and all the things. And it used to be the flour of the rich, because only the rich could afford to sift out and throw away that part of the flour. But the bran and the germ, they all went to the agricultural industry. So everyone's enjoying white flour. Everyone thinks this is fantastic until there was some diseases, beriberi, pellagra, anemia, and there were skin issues, digestive issues, mental institutions were just overflowing with people. And so a lot of B vitamin deficiencies, anemia, so iron deficiencies, and all of these things, they could trace back to the flour. And all those nutrients that had been stripped out of it once you took the bran and the germ out. And they said, oh, you got to put that back in. You've got to get the bran and the germ back in. We need all those nutrients back in the flour. Well, they weren't willing to do that because they were making a lot of money in the agricultural industry. So instead, they said, we will enrich the flour. And they put 4 of those vitamins back in. So they've taken out several. They say that there's 40 of the 44 nutrients we need in flour. And they stripped it out, and all they did is they put 4 synthetic ones back in. They thought problem solved until there was a rise in birth defects. And they could again trace that to the lack of natural folate in flour. So let's enrich it again, putting a synthetic form of folic acid into the flour, which is a neurotoxin to over half the population. And Sarah will share more on that. But that is, well, then they took it a step further, even. And the oil residues that are in the flour, they bleached the flour. And that's the flour that's on the shelf today. So if you get bleached, enriched flour, white flour on the store shelf, that's what you're getting. So it's no wonder people are having struggles with gluten, having like digestive issues and things like that. But it's not the gluten. It's that white dead flour on the store shelves that we were never intended to eat. That was never the way. We were supposed to eat the grains. Grains sustain life. We need grains, but fresh milled, full of all the vitamins and the minerals and the nutrients that we need, along with vitamin E. It is one of the most nutrient dense sources of vitamin E. And vitamin E helps with viruses. And if you've heard any, teaching on freshly milled flour, a common thing that people talk about is warts and how eating the bread, getting all that vitamin E from the bread, can actually help warts go away. And I've seen it myself in my own family, just struggling with warts and trying all the things, and vitamin E significantly helped to take those away. So all of that is in the flour, the way we're supposed to eat it when it's freshly milled. And why use it freshly milled, not just store it? Like, why isn't it storable? Think about an avocado or banana. You cut them open, they're going to begin to oxidize. Those nutrients are going to begin to break down, and we want to capture those nutrients. So grind it, put it in the freezer. That's going to stop that oxidation process. Or use it right away and bake with it, and then those nutrients are captured in there. So, any questions on why freshly milled flour? All right, I'll pass it over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Deborah. I like to always think about like how Jesus talks about how he's the bread of life and that we are to eat of him, right? And nobody's allergic to Jesus, but here we have all these people allergic to flour, allergic to bread, allergic to gluten. Um, there's so much biblical reference to bread, and the people then knew that bread would sustain them. That's why the Israelites had to go to Egypt and ask Joseph for grain. They had lots of flocks, they had lots of food, they had all the things they needed. Their flocks would have been dead if they didn't have any food, right? But they needed grain. They were willing to even sacrifice possibly their brother to get the grain because they were desperate for it. So I love to think about it scripturally as well because that matters to me. So we have struggled with a lot of health issues here. We adopted two boys from foster care, and they have a lot of neurological issues, and they were tested for for several things. But one of the things that came back is that they had what's called an MTHFR gene mutation. If you've heard of this before, put a one in the chat just so I know who I'm talking to. If you've never heard of it, put a two, just so I know, like, I don't know what that is. Um, anyway, so the psychiatrist who was helping us was trying to explain this to me, and she said basically that folic acid is found nowhere on the planet naturally. It is a chemical added to all of the grains by law in the United States. So anything with rice, with whatever, unless it's organic, has folic acid added to it. Cereals, crackers, breads, pizzas, like everything my kids eat. I have five sons. I'm like, oh my word, how in the world are we going to do this? And she said you have to cut that out because it's a neurotoxin. It's affecting their brain, and it's causing more problems. Most people don't know that they have it because they haven't done the genetic testing. But it's estimated about 60% of the population today has this gene mutation. Folic acid is in multivitamins. Folic acid is in it's literally everywhere. And I felt very overwhelmed, clearly, but also my kids, right? I want to make sure I can provide for my kids what they need. And so I started to really research and I started making bread with organic store-bought flour because it doesn't have the enriched part to it. Anything that says enriched has folic acid in it. Um, but nobody would eat it because it wasn't great. And I was not a bread maker. I was not a baker. It's not my favorite thing to do. I'm a busy mom. I feel like all I do is make food and it's always gone. And so I was like, oh, my husband was like, honey, if you toast this stuff, like it's like eating a crouton, it's not good. And I was like, I'm trying, you know. And so I heard Deborah talking about this and I thought, I don't know if I have time for that. Maybe I can try it, but I don't have a mill. My mother-in-law gifted us a mill because she heard what was going on and said it's for my grandkids, you know. And so I started. What I didn't expect to see was the drastic change that took place. I have one son who has some really severe neurological issues. I'm talking about like mental health, hallucinations, rage, really, really severe learning disabilities, things like that. And he started calming down. And his brother, who has a lot of similar things, but not as severe, started learning at school. And I didn't put two and two together until one of their therapists came and told me, she came to one of these workshops and she said, when did you start this? And I said, in early December. And she pulls up her case notes and she starts looking and she said, Sarah, that's when we saw the big change. They were like, did you change his meds? What's different? What's going on? Why is he doing so good, right? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we just figured something out. I didn't know what was going on. It was the bread. And he had the best, I'm not even kidding, the best 9 months ever. I had pulled everything out. There was no more cereal. Oh, the tantrums we had. Oh my goodness. But I started making yogurt in my Instapot, which is the easiest thing in the world, by the way. And I started making the bread and I started making like bagels and muffins and things. Because anything you make from flour, you can make from this. No behaviors. The school wasn't calling us all the time. We weren't having holes put in our walls. Like there were big, big, big changes until he went back to school in August and he started eating the free breakfast and free lunch, which of course he's going to choose the Pop-Tarts and all of the carby stuff, right? And he has had two visits to psych hospitals this fall, and it is directly related to the bread. Last week we had snow day the whole week. He's so calm all week. My husband's like, it really is the bread. I can't believe this because he wasn't eating all that garbage. You guys, this changed my whole life, and it is doing him good just from this. Meanwhile, I am diabetic. I can't have bread and all that garbage, or I swell like I don't know, like I swell badly and I'm in pain and my blood sugar's high and I can feel it. My vision starts to, all the things. Um, and my blood sugar doesn't spike with this because it's like this perfect balance of fiber and protein and carbs, and it's not empty starches. It's like healthy starches, right? Particularly if you freeze it and then toast it, it actually changes the type of starch. It's a resistant starch for your blood sugar. But we've had people come to our workshops that have blood sugar monitors and we write the number down or look at the number and then they'll eat and we'll watch what happens and it barely spikes their blood sugar. And we've had people come to our workshops that have been gluten intolerant and told they probably have celiac disease. Celiac disease, genetic celiac, is less than 1% of the population. But because it mimics celiac disease, the doctors say you probably have celiac. You have to avoid all gluten. And so start eating gluten-free everything. Well, guess what? Gluten-free everything is horrible for you. It's not healthy food. They use rice, they use all the things. Anyway, people that have come to these workshops that are gluten-free are eating this and going, I'm not running to the bathroom. I'm not having massive pain in my gut. I am okay. What in the world? And we've had, like, I have a good friend of mine that came and her husband's like, thanks, Sarah. That was the most expensive $20 workshop she's ever attended because she went home. She's like, we're buying a mill, we're buying. He's like, what? What's going on? But she has literally changed her life. She has this one friend I'm talking about. She has been able to eat. She had stopped traveling because she couldn't be that far from a bathroom. She had stopped like going to parties because there was never anything to eat there for her, and she would be embarrassed because she'd take up the bathroom all the time. Like it's changed her life. She also used some really good probiotics with like antifungals in them that we use as well that have helped heal her gut. Her gut was a mess. And when your gut's that messy, you need some help to heal it. But we've had several people that said they couldn't eat gluten or said that they were diabetic, that they can't have bread, begin to eat this. And so it is so good. I love that my kids are like, Mom, can I just have some toast? Or Mom, can I have a piece of bread? Mom, can I have a blueberry muffin? Because I don't put sugar in it. And I'm like, absolutely, because they're eating their vitamins, you guys. All those vitamins. It's so good for you. So good for you. Deborah, you want to share anything else?
Yeah, like it has been so fun to share this with people. Like Sarah was saying, people who have been gluten intolerant or glucose monitors, like actually sitting here and seeing their numbers as they've been in the classes. A friend of mine, she was gluten free for 15 years. And we go to the gym together and we just got talking one day. And she said, so you're telling me that I could eat this and that this would be okay for me? I'm like, yeah, let's try it. She got a mill. She started with more of the ancient grains. So she was using rye, spelt, that kind of thing. So and a little bit of einkorn also. So those are the more gentle grains, your einkorn, spelt, those ones. So she started with those. And then now she is all of it and loving it and thriving, more energy now. Uh, yes, she knew her gut was a mess. So she did find a probiotic with digestive enzymes also and get that in there and a quality multivitamin that she did also. And then with the bread. So sometimes people are like, this bread's making me feel sick. That happens to people. And that just means that your gut is a mess. And it's so much of a mess that you actually can't handle the goodness that's in this bread. And if you have leaky gut really bad, things like that, the bread, yes, you're going to feel like the bread is making you sick, but it's not. Your gut just needs a little bit of help in healing first, and then it's able to handle all the nutrients. We were designed to eat this bread. This is what we were created to eat. So we should be able to, unless it's genetic celiac. But for some people, they do detox with it, but they need a probiotic to go with it and do that healing step first, and then they can really tolerate the bread. So it has been a journey, and I have absolutely loved just seeing my kids enjoy the bread, and just they're not eating as much either. Sarah, I think you've noticed too how groceries, we're not spending as much money on groceries anymore. It
Yes.
is, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I have five sons, so I have three left at home, but I the amount of food teenage boys can eat, anyone know? Anyway, we would make French toast or something, and they would eat like 8 or 10 slices, and I'm like, we're going through like 3 loaves of bread for one meal before. Now they'll eat like 3 or 4 and be like, oh, I'm so full. Or grilled cheese, like one grilled cheese sandwich, and they're full. And they're not coming back 30 minutes later going, I'm still hungry. Can I have a snack? Because they're not. They're not asking for it. We switched out our snacks. So somebody um, was asking about that. We do yogurt and muffins and bagels for breakfast. We do nuts and fruits. Like I do some dried fruit. I'd rather that they do the fresh fruit, but sometimes they like the dried fruit better. We do I'm trying to think what else we do for snacks. We do a lot of cheese. We do a lot of like dairy type things because there's protein in there. I've got a couple kids that really like mixing some fruit with cottage cheese, things like that. I make homemade granola, which also is not hard at all. and is so much cheaper than buying granola, but I have to buy the organic oats so that it's not enriched because your store-bought oats are again enriched because they're a grain. Um, and I add flaxseed to that. They don't even know. Um, so they're getting healthier stuff. So yes, so many changes. Now, I do have my boys on probiotics and I do have my boys on a high quality methylated vitamin. I have to. I can't just give them any over the counter vitamin, but honestly, none of us should be taking something like that. We need high quality ingredients that came out of plants and like from the earth that God created for our bodies and not something that was created in a lab. Most over the counter vitamins or supplements, a lot of them have been just created in a lab and they're a chemical and your body's just going to flush it out anyway. It doesn't know what to do with it. And so gut health has been a really, really big part of this. Personally, I had tried everything. I used to be on 16 prescriptions until I turned to gut health. And I thought for sure it was just a total fluke. And I ended up healing so much that even my psychiatrist was like, you can come off those anxiety meds anytime. You can come off those antidepressants anytime. I'll help you. And that scared me because I was like severely suicidally depressed. I just had a mess and I had a lot of trauma in our lives. My son had cancer. There was just a lot of things. And so I needed support. But what I didn't realize was what a mess my gut was, how much leaky gut I had, and how much candida overgrowth I had. And it was coming out everywhere. And I was inflamed and I needed to get the inflammation down. I needed to get my blood sugar under control. Even though they kept saying, well, you're not quite diabetic. Well, you're not quite I was having all of these issues because my blood sugar was like all over the place with what I ate. And so if you would have told me 5 years ago, heal your gut and you're going to feel 20 years younger, I would have laughed in your face. I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. But I'm telling you, I'm a walking example of gut health. I'm on 3 prescriptions now and I have lost 65 pounds and I my pain levels have gone from a constant like 7 to 9 down to about 2 to 4 depending on the weather. My bones do not like these Arctic blasts in Michigan here, but I digress. Um and so I'm telling you, like gut health, I thought I couldn't afford it. Our medical bills went down by half in 1 year because of me healing my gut, because I wasn't running to the specialist all the time, because I wasn't needing all these other things. I'm telling you, it was helpful. And then adding in the food, you can't out supplement a bad diet, and you really can't out eat a messy gut. Like it, that you need both because there's toxins everywhere. You're breathing them right now. They're in your skin products, in your shampoos, in your water that you're drinking, everywhere that you go. So, gut health is the way to go. I didn't know it was related to almost every disease. So now our whole family uses it, and it has been life-changing. Eczema's disappeared, asthma's disappeared, um, inflammatory things have disappeared. We've had so many wins. Mental health issues. I didn't know all that was related to my gut health. Here we are. So I love that this is part of that because sourdough is so good for your gut. But healthy sourdough, right? If you're eating this dead flour, your body's going to be fighting it because it doesn't know what to do with it. It's just an empty starch. And the sourdough is going to help, but you're kind of like you got two pieces there of like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Oh, this is helpful. Oh, I don't know what to do with this. And you're eating it in the same food, right? And so that's why we talk about all of this together because it really all pairs together.
Yes. Yeah. Because fresh milk flour on its own is fantastic. And if you want to take it to the next level, that's when you do sourdough because already fermented a little bit and it's easier to digest. So really the absolute best starting point if you have a ton of gut issues would be einkorn sourdough. That's a whole other thing to learn how to make it with einkorn flour. It is a softer grain and it's more finicky to work with, but that is the most easily digestible. And if you make it a sourdough, that's next level for einkorn. But any good organic grain as sourdough is going to be more gentle on the system than a yeast bread or things like that, just because of the fermentation and then it's already started to break down. So if you're wondering I didn't go over this earlier, but on that guide is where to get, yeah, where do we, okay, that exactly what I was going to answer. Where do we get a mill? Where do I get the grains? That kind of thing. On that guide, I have some ideas of where to get your wheat berries. So find a local Amish Mennonite stores. Here in Michigan, we have several in the area, and they have been excellent sources. So if you find something local to you, those are good options. Online, Azure Standard is a good option that you put an order in once a month, and then you meet the truck where at a local meetup place. You choose a meetup place in where I meet mine here in Grand Rapids. There's maybe 100 of us in this Lowe's parking lot that meet this big truck. So that's a good option for organic grains. I like soft white wheat from them, hard white, hard red, organic. I'm getting organic spelt and organic barley. Coconut sugar, they've got really good prices for organic coconut sugar as a sweetener, a natural sweetener. So a good option for that one. Another one, Country Life Foods. If you can order online through them, they have free shipping and orders over $99. So that's an option. I'm not too familiar with the grains they have, but I do know people who recommend that. Or if you want just a small amount of grain, you're not sure, there's options on Amazon too. So there's so many different companies out there that have grains. But my best thing is look local, see what you can find first, and then search online to see what you can find. So then what wheat berries to use, that's what's listed next. So you got the soft white wheat, like we said, for anything that's using baking powder, baking soda, that kind of leavening agent is your soft wheat. You have hard red, hard white, for your breads, anything that's using yeast or sourdough. And then there's the ancient grains. So spelt, einkorn, and there's barley, and there's so many others. And it's easy to get overwhelmed and think, wow, there's so many, where do I start? If I had to choose one and just purchase one grain to get started, I would probably go with hard white wheat and just use it for everything. Your cookies are still going to turn out. It'll be okay. But that would be the one that I would choose if I was only going to do one. I would just get some hard white wheat. So mills, where do we get them? They are in high demand. It is crazy how quickly they sell out, no matter which website you're looking at. I do know Nutrimilk Classics are coming back in stock. They did tell us tomorrow. We'll see, but they gave us the date of January 30th that they're back in stock. So be looking if you are wanting one. I do know that those are coming back. I'm not sure about the Harvest. Impact Mill is a smaller mill by Nutrimilk. I actually don't recommend that one. You might look at that and think, oh, it's $60 cheaper or whatever from the other one. But for the money, I would go for the Classic. If you're going to invest in a mill, the impacts, they're smaller, the motors overheat easily, and they're just not designed for any volume of flour. So if you're going to make the investment, I would say go with the Classic. And if you want the stone mill, go with the Harvest. But yes, the Classic will be in stock soon, and they're hoping to keep them in stock more regularly, they said. But Nutrimill.com, and there is a code for $20 off. That will get you a little bit of savings using the code Deborah20 that's on the paper there also. So it's a little bonus that you can get a little discount on the mill if you choose to order one. So yeah, we've also, I think on the papers, it'll say how to substitute. If you have your recipes that grandma's chocolate chip cookies, and how do I make these with fresh milled flour? There's a guide there that basically you're just gonna add a little bit more flour is what I've discovered. And you wanna have them nice and thick, because some people like, oh, my cookies are just so flat. Well, if you're doing the same measurements of flour, it is going to probably give you flattened cookies and things like that. So adding a little bit more, so like a quarter cup to every cup, is going to give you the shape of cookies that you're hoping for, nice firm cookies. So there's some ideas. And then also how to store your grains. Like I mentioned, if you mill it, store it in the freezer if you're not going to use it right away. I do keep a little bit in the fridge. If it's only going to be a couple days, I can keep it in the fridge. And then your wheat berries, they're good for years and years and years. I like storing mine in 5-gallon pails. Just keep them sealed, kind of thing, food grade buckets. But you can use Mylar bags if you want to really keep any bugs out. I go through so much that they're not in my pails very long. I think maybe it's a month and the pail's empty. But if you're going through it slower, you might want to think about Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, that kind of thing, to help your grains stay longer. So I think that kind of covers where to get the supplies if you're hoping for it. And I think it's been long enough that we can go back to our bread and begin kneading this. So when I mentioned at the beginning, all right, sorry, before I start, let's just go ahead, add the salt. I'm just going to dump it in. And then we are just going to start kneading this. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I didn't think I had time for sourdough. It was not something that I wanted to be a slave to. I have things that I need to do, and I don't want to have to set a timer and stay home and take care of my sourdough, stretch and folds, and all that silliness. So with this recipe, you notice we did that first step. So the night before, 5 minutes, get your sourdough active. The next morning, you mix up your flour, water, and starter, and then you go get ready for the day. Well, it sits. You come back, you knead this for maybe 5 minutes, kneading it really, really well, and you can walk away and just let it sit for the next, you could go to work and come back and then bake it. I typically, depending on the temperature of your house and things like that, it's usually about maybe 4 to 6 hours, and then it's ready to bake. So kneading this really well. And you notice it's not really sticking to my hands. That's the natural oils in the grain. But if you find that it is sticking to your hands, just make your hands a little bit damp and then work with it. You can add a little flour if it's really getting sticky, but hopefully you don't have to, and you can just work this really well. So you knead it really, really well, and then you're just gonna let this sit. Now, because it is already, the evening, you probably aren't gonna stay up for the next 4 to 6 hours to bake this tonight. So what I would recommend doing is take this and let it sit in a bowl covered for maybe an hour or two. Then when you go to bed tonight, put it in the fridge. Again, sourdough is going to work to our schedule, not us to it. And put it in the fridge, and that just slows down that fermentation process. Then in the morning, when you're ready to bake it, take it out, and then we'll do the shaping parts. Now, if you did want to do stretch and folds, you can. The recipe does list that. That is basically going around the bowl and just kind of pulling up the dough and folding it over and going all around and just pulling it up and folding it over. That's all a stretch and fold is. And that's just to kind of encourage the gluten structures is the theory behind it. But I find that if I knead this enough for about 5 minutes, I have not noticed a difference. I have done some where I have stretch and fold and have it exact same day, same conditions, all the things. And the difference was so minimal, I could barely even notice. So that's what made me decide it's not really that important as long as I knead this well here. So in the morning, or if you let this sit all day, you will, when it's ready, I'm going to demonstrate how to shape a loaf. Yes, this dough isn't ready for shaping, but I want to just show you how you will shape it when you're ready to bake it, whether that's tonight or tomorrow morning after you've taken it out of the fridge. So you put it on your counter, and you're going to cup your hands together, and you're going to pull the dough toward you. This is causing this part to kind of tuck underneath. You want to create a lot of surface tension here because that's what's going to give you the good oven spring. It's going to rise well in the oven if it's got that tension. So you're just pull towards you and then turn. Pull towards you and turn. It should be really smooth and really tight on the top, and that's giving it good oven spring. But you're doing this while your oven is heating. So you're going to shape it, let it sit on the counter, and so you've preheated the oven. You can bake it. So I'm on the recipe now. I'm on step 4 of the shaping and baking. So during this time, so we've got our dough, we've got that surface tension going. Now we're going to preheat our oven at 480 degrees. And we have our Dutch oven in there, or your pan, whatever you're going to use. You could use a pizza stone, a loaf pan, whatever. That's in there heating up. Once your oven is to temperature, I would highly recommend using parchment paper or a bread sling, something like that, because this is going to stick real bad to whatever you're baking it in. So you're then put it, honestly, now you do have to score it in some way. You'll see some very fancy designs on sourdough bread. That's fantastic if people want to do that. I typically just take a serrated knife and I might just, do a half circle here or a line through it. That's all I do. The purpose is it allows the gases to escape through that. So there is a purpose to it. If you don't do it, you're going to find that it's just going to kind of have these weird things. It's going to find its own way to release those gases. So there is a purpose to it. So you're going to want to score it in some way before baking it. You'll put it in the oven with the lid on, your Dutch oven, or I have 2 cast iron loaf pans, and I just put one on top of the other. So you just want something with a lid. It could even be a casserole dish with a lid. That's how my mom bakes hers. So something with a lid, baking it for 20 to 25 minutes, or 20 minutes, sorry, at 480. Then you're going to bring down the temperature to 450, take the lid off, and then finish baking it. And if you have a thermometer, you can actually probe the bread, and it should be about 200. If I see 205, I'm like, oh, it's good. So that'll prevent having bread that's got dough, it's doughy in the middle, undercooked, if you just use a thermometer to check to see if it's done. Because all ovens cook differently, so that's a good way of knowing if it's done. Then let it cool completely before slicing it, because if you slice it when it's still warm, it's delicious, and I've done it, but it does let the steam escape from it, and it is drier any part that you don't eat right away. What was the, okay, it's actually on the recipe. So it's step 9. It says when the internal temperature of the loaf reaches 210 degrees Fahrenheit. I usually, if it gets to 205, I call it good. But yes, it does say 210 in the recipe. If you struggle with your bread burning on the bottom, which is what happened with me with Dutch ovens in my oven, I was finding that the bottoms were burning. I now take a cookie sheet and I put it underneath, and that is enough of a heat shield. So on the bottom rack, I've got a cookie sheet, and then I'm putting my Dutch ovens on the next rack, and that has prevented any burning on the bottoms of my loaf. So if that's something that you're going to find, just put a cookie sheet underneath it. Now, you might think, I don't have a Dutch oven. How can I bake this? You can what they call open bake. And I put that note on the bottom there. So what that is you are going to bake your entire oven similar to a Dutch oven now. So in the preheating part, when you're preheating it to 408 degrees, you're putting maybe a 9x13 pan or several loaf pans or something on the bottom rack of your oven filled with water. And that's giving that steam to your whole oven. Then you're going to bake once it reaches temperature, you're going to bake your loaf, same thing, 480 degrees for 20 minutes. And then instead of taking the lid off, what you're going to do is just take that water out and then continue baking it at the reduced temperature. So that is a way that you can still make this without a Dutch oven or 2 loaf pans, casserole dish for the lid. Use whatever you have. Don't feel like you have to go buy something just to bake this. There are many possibilities of how it can be baked. All right, I will look forward to seeing pictures of your bread and seeing how it turned out. And don't feel free to ask any questions as you're going along tonight, like, is this ready to be baked? Is it not? Things like that. There is a way, it's called a poke test, where you can poke your bread, and if it just slowly comes back, it's ready to be baked. But if you poke it and it stays, yep, not ready. Or it is really, if it doesn't go in at all, if it's too hard. I have all of that information in a post in my Facebook group called Baker Breads. If you'd like to be added to that, let me know. And there's a lot of more information in there, a lot of recipes in there for freshly milled flour. But that is the key to knowing when your bread is to be baked is that poke test that's in that. Or I can even share it in the chat too, the information on that poke test. So you have that to refer back to know, hey, is my bread ready to be baked or not? Right.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask real quick right now? You can unmute yourself. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, hop into the chat if you have more questions. We can add you to the group. We also have a PDF that we can send you of a bunch of recipes of other things you can make with fresh milk flour. If you're interested in that, let us know. Okay. Have a great night.